Well, welcome to The Perspective. I'm Lorie Hartshorn, and I'm excited to be here this week. I'm sitting in for Mike. It's always my privilege to be at The Perspective. And we have some great guests. And today you are going to meet Mary Marantz. Now, she knows what it is like to be underestimated. Maybe you do too. Mary grew up a single wide trailer in West Virginia. She became the first in her family to graduate college. She went on to Yale Law School. That's no small leap, right? But beyond the impressive resume, Mary has wrestled with the same fears and doubts and what we would call imposter syndrome that keeps so many of us playing small. Well, in her new book, Underestimated, Mary exposes the lies that hold her back, all of us back at times, like perfectionism, like self sabotage, and feeling like we're not enough, and shows us how to move forward anyway. And if you've ever felt called to something more, but doubted that someone like you could get there, well, this conversation is for you. Mary, welcome to The Perspective today.
Oh my gosh, Lori, thank you so much for having me and for that introduction. Like, you come do that every day.
Well, you know what? When I saw your book, which just recently launched, congratulations.
Thank you.
There's a lot of hard work behind getting that book out there. But your message is so important, Mary. So we want to hear a little of your story. Take us back to that single wide trailer in West
Mm.
Virginia. What we would consider this huge successful leap to Yale Law School. But you said that actually success was where the real trouble began. Like, what do you mean by that? How did the real trouble begin when you made this huge successful leap?
Yeah. So for everybody listening, like I love that you emphasize that single wide trailer part because sometimes when people hear trailer, they can think of like a really nice double wide with a permanent foundation. But whatever stock photo you have in your mind of dilapidated trailer in Appalachia, that's pretty much it. Or you can go to the book dirt.com, which is my first book, and you see the cover. That's the actual trailer I grew up in. My dad's a logger. His dad was a logger. 8 generations deep were loggers. The surprising to no one, the trailers in rural West Virginia in the 80s were not built to last. So the ceiling caves in, it's leaking, the floor caves in. So really like, rough sort of condition in terms of the trailer itself. And then, yeah, first in my family to go to college. Both of my parents barely graduated high school, and I end up at Yale for law school. And most people see this upward of explosion of mobility like that, and that's the story that they are really interested in. And me, I kind of got interested in this spark that came before of what did the generation before me do and the generation before that. And so when I get to Yale Law School in my first book Dirt, I say this passage and I pull this passage into Underestimated to kind of do a deep dive on it of what if success is where the real trouble begins? What if we get everything we ever wanted only to tuck ourselves in at night in the cool cotton sheets with just us and the darkness settled in and still feel like a walking, waking imposter? We whisper to our thin epidermis screaming out at us, what could you possibly still want? You have everything you ever wished for. And so what I mean by that passage is we think we can achieve our way out of imposter syndrome. We think if we can just accomplish enough, then we will finally feel like we belong, like we're equipped, like we are the person for the job. And in reality, that always had to be an inside job. It turns out there's no amount of more that can ever make you stop feeling less than.
Wow. Oh man, we could unpack that for like hours because
Yeah.
I honestly think, I mean, just quickly for viewers, listeners, imposter syndrome. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so there's a whole chapter, like you mentioned, we go through all these topics, and I actually break that out chapter by chapter. So each chapter is a different face of fear, who talk about being really boring. We'll maybe talk about that in a minute. So there's perfectionism, people pleasing, procrastination, and one of them is imposter syndrome is a sheet of thin ice. Because a very, the more technical term for imposter syndrome is actually the fear of being found out. It's the fear, if not enough is the fear that something that you're missing disqualifies you before you even begin, then imposter syndrome is the fear that soon everyone else will realize it too. And I do a deep dive into Clance and Imes, who are the two psychologists who originally coined the phrase. They actually call it imposter phenomenon among high achieving women. So they focus on women specifically, high achieving women really specifically, and I say in the book, I like phenomenon better. It makes me feel less alone. Like syndrome makes me feel like I'm the lone soul patient zero suffering from this self doubt disease. Phenomenon feels like we're all in it together.
You know what? Wow, that is so fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes we put like the high achieving men, go out in the world, conquer everything, get everything, and then realize that's not all there is. But there's
Mm,
something to being a woman and achieving things and feeling like somehow you're going to be found out that you're not actually,
yeah,
a real deal or worthy of
right.
this, right? And
Yes.
wow, that is rich. I mean, your book talks about the shift,
Mm,
not as a big dramatic leap, but as starting small. Now, what do you
mhm.
mean by that?
So I read an article once that said the best ideas are a switch, not a dial. They don't just turn the volume up on what we were already thinking. They find a way to flip that very thinking on its head. And traditional wisdom, in the sort of like hustle culture, go for it wisdom is that the opposite of playing small is just go big all the time, swing for the fences, leap, and the net will appear. And Lori, it's not that I have a problem with go big moments. I've had a bunch of go big moments in my life, what I call headline days versus small print days. The problem is that none of them, getting into Yale, signing a 5-book deal with my publisher, a coast to coast speaking tour with my face on the side of a tour bus, none of them ever made me feel any different on the inside. The very next day, we don't ask ourselves enough questions about what happens the day after the hero gets everything they ever wanted. I went right back to doubting myself and playing small. And so, paradoxically, some of the most important work we will do to quit playing small is to actually start small because that allows the work we're doing every day a chance to kind of soak into our bones and become a very part of who we are. Right? We don't go to the gym once and think we're suddenly gym people or we're in shape. We become that by putting in the efforts day after day.
I love that so much because I think sometimes we live our life like we have to meet this ultimate point. Like, if only I could accomplish this. And yet we
Yeah.
actually lose sight of the journey, don't we? Not just the journey towards accomplishing something, but the journey inward. And
Yeah.
and that is where the real work is, and otherwise, you're just left holding the trophy, and then what? Right?
Right. Yeah. Something I actually tell my coaching clients is assume it all works out. How would you prepare then? Like, if you actually believed that everything that you were working towards and dreaming for was going to happen, what would you be doing right now to get ready? Right? Like, don't pack, don't ask for rain and not pack an umbrella, that kind of an idea. And then that really tells us like how serious we are about becoming the person who can stand in that goal, right? It's sort of the difference between setting a goal, which you get to celebrate one day, and every day waking up with the intention of who do I need to be today to one day stand in that goal. And every day you do that, you actually get to celebrate.
That is so beautiful. I love when you say, being underestimated is a surprising superpower. Tell me about that.
Oh, yes. So, growing up in a trailer, single wide trailer in West Virginia, ending up at Yale Law, like you could say I'm very familiar and comfortable with the underdog role. The problem is, I say in chapter 14, the underdog is a role of a lifetime. And what I mean by that is if we are not careful, we can spend our whole lives playing that part. And so in chapter 1, I talk about, in a very sort of tongue in cheek way, I talk about for some of us, we've taken other people's doubts and disbelief and they've blurred and bled in our minds at once auto-tuned and amplified until they become the singular voice in our reason that tells us it would be safer not to show up. For others of us, though, in a true Jeff Goldblum worthy life finds a way, adapt or find yourself extinct moment of clarity, we take their petrified doubts, inject them with every ounce of survival mode wired right into our DNA, and hatch an entirely different species of success altogether. In short, we take their doubts and we turn them into jet fuel. And so we start to then look for every perceived slight. There's two words in the book that are a huge indictment of myself, Lori, and that is perceived slight, where sometimes people really are doubting us and we use that as jet fuel. And then other times when we're not getting that fuel we need, we will look for every, uninvited moment, every overlooked moment because we think we need that to keep us driving forward.
Mm.
It's sort of this idea of like the girl in the red cape can't stop running if the big bad wolf isn't chasing her. And so I spent 20 years trying to prove other people wrong, but really harnessing being underestimated as the quote unquote tongue in cheek superpower that led me to all of this success. The problem is it left me a burned out shell of myself in the process.
Yeah. Wow. You know what? When I listen to you talk, I just feel like for all of us, no matter our journey, you have to ask the question, what is motivating me?
Mhm.
Why do I
Yes.
need to do what I'm doing?
Right.
And I mean, I could tell you all my story, but we don't have time for that. And I can say honestly that when if you can get to the root of why you do what you do, which I really believe that's where our faith comes in. We're going to talk more about that when we get back. We can that actually God loves us so much. He's willing to do that work in us if we'll let him.
Right.
But we're going to come right back in just a minute with Mary and her wonderful book, Underestimated. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back. We're here with Mary Marantz and her new book, Underestimated. And here's what I love, Mary. One of the your subtitle says this: Name the fear and move forward anyway. I love that. I mean, that's worth buying a book right there. I often use the phrase, do it afraid.
Mhm.
That has helped motivate me to get through the fear and to move to the other side. And you say fear is a boring liar. Like, talk
Mhm.
to us about this thing called fear and how we can move to the other side of it.
Yeah, Lori. So, in addition to being an author and a podcast host, I also coach women who want to do that. And a couple years ago, I had a string of coaching calls where all of these different women working on different projects were getting hit with the same boring scripts of fear. I mean, it was eerie, actually. Like the sentences coming out of their mouth were like copy and paste. And it was winning. It was keeping them stuck, and I felt fear attacking me in the same way, and so I pulled out my phone one day, no introduction, and I just said, "It's all been done. It's all been done better. It's all been done by somebody the world actually wants to pay attention to. I can't start until it's perfect. I can't start until I'm perfect. I what if I start and the critics come? What if my voice doesn't matter? What if I don't really matter? What if it's already too late?" And there are a few more in there, but you get the idea. And I said, fear is not your friend. Start anyway, start now. And it sort of took off because people were like, bingo, all of them. I have it up, down, and diagonally. And that actually led me to this epiphany moment of what if fear attacks creatives in particular? And I don't mean like are a good painter, but that you are creating good things into the world. Fear attacks creatives in particular because it is jealous that it itself is not creative at all. It does not have any creative power. It only has this destructive power, right? If we think about the one of the most forward-facing character traits we learn about God is that of creator, and we made in his image are inherently creative, then it makes sense that the enemy of that would be lacking creativity. And so, I say fear's not a very creative guy, but he is a busy guy. And so, like any good productive overachiever, he has learned how to prioritize, which means he will only show up if you're about to do work that matters. If you're playing small, hiding in plain sight, he'll leave you alone. Show up and do work that might actually help people. And now you are a level one threat. And you better expect fear to show up, teeth bared and snarling. Let me tell you, write a book about how to take down fear and see how that plays out. Like fear has not been very happy with me. Technology problems. Our car breaks down. We have an appliance that's about to go. My Facebook got hacked. Just on and on of these distractions and these things that are meant to feel defeating and discouraging. But the cool part is, Lori, we can actually use that weakness against fear. That if it is so uncreative, so boring, so predictable, we can actually use it to predict that we must be on the right track because fear being really busy wouldn't show up unless we were.
I love that so much. I mean, my little phrase, and I didn't coin it because I've heard it from others, do it afraid, was actually acknowledge the fear, but do it anyway.
Yeah. Right.
And I do believe that you're hitting on something very important that we're made to create. We're made in the image of God. And when we're going to do anything, and creating can be creating those brownies to encourage a friend, having that conversation with someone, in your backyard or in the school ground. I mean, creating isn't just about making a painting, but I love that so much. What's holding us back? And you use the word self sabotage. We talked about imposter syndrome, but talk to me about self-sabotage and why that is so it's just it's hideous actually that it can just
Mm,
be actually a voice of fear, right?
right. Yeah, actually, it's chapter 3. Self-sabotage is a shot glass, and it has nothing to do with alcohol. It basically, like, there's a running metaphor through the whole book about there are those of us, and we tend to be hard story people, if you want me to be honest, who feel like whatever we have tried to do, it always seems so much harder for us than it appears to be for other people. They implement, they execute, they achieve what? Like it's hard Elwood style. Meanwhile, we keep pushing the boulder all the way up almost to our breakthrough moment. We can taste the rarefied air. And then at the last minute, we blink. We lose our grip, we lose our way, and the boulder rolls all the way back down the mountain. And that is self sabotaging. It is that blinking, that just kidding moment right before the world might actually have to see what we've been working on. And so, chapter 3 is talking about this idea of, I saw a post on social media once that said if you think you have the capacity of a shot glass, and anytime you get a little bit more than that, you will subconsciously shrink yourself back down. And I added until you fit into the tiny containers you think you believe you belong in. And so much of that chapter and breaking free of self sabotage is actually about expanding our capacity for what I call little t trust. We as Christians can get uncomfortable with phrases like self trust or self help because it's not our big T trust. It's not where our ultimate hope or our ultimate trust goes in God. But the little T trust is a big part of it, which I define in the book basically as stewardship, our ability to hold and navigate well with wisdom. How much do we think we can actually handle before we will mess it up?
Yeah.
And so, really quickly, when you think about the parable of the talents and the third person who buried the talent, it was out of fear that this little T trust problem, that they would mess it up.
Oh, 100%. I think I love the word stewardship. I think the
Yeah.
older I get, the more I just love that word. And
Mm,
what I hear in your book and what you're saying today is do the thing right in front of you, steward it well.
yeah.
And actually, it's not about accomplishing maybe what we perceive the great thing. The great thing is the little thing right there.
Mm,
Does that align with your message?
100%. Like we hear a phrase like, he or she who is trusted with little will be trusted with more, will be given more. And I think sometimes we look at the end result of that, of the getting the more. But I actually think some of the greatest work that's being done on us is what we're doing with the little, right? It's not just about the means to an end of getting more, it's about who we become. And then the secondary effect is, oh, yeah, then also you can be trusted with more. But most importantly, we're allowing the work to work on us. So often I hear Christian women in particular say things like, well, God doesn't need me to accomplish this. God can either do it himself or he can use someone else. Like it's going to be put into the world anyway. It doesn't matter if I don't do it. And what that really is, what I say to them is like, that's not the point. This isn't a results question. It's not only about who can be helped, that's a part of it, but it's also an obedience question. God doesn't have to work with you, but he's asking to partner with you and co create with you because the work is going to work on you.
Oh, I'm so with you in that. And
Yeah.
I just think it's the most beautiful experience of our life to step
Yes.
into what God invites us to do. And He does make us all uniquely. He has our, already designed us for unique things in this world.
Mm.
What do you say to someone who maybe feels they're underestimating themselves or underestimating what God is actually inviting them into, and they feel stuck in because some of those layers of fear are there? What do you say to them today?
So there is an Oliver Wendell Holmes quote that I think about pretty much on a daily basis at this point. And the quote says, most people, like most people we know, our friends, our family, people we know online, most people are going to go to their graves with the music still inside them unplayed. And we know that's true. We all know people who had a dream, whether it's a parent or a grandparent or sibling or ourselves, where we know there's this like bump in our spirit every day that's like, hey, when are you going to do that thing? Hey, when are you going to like get serious about moving forward on that thing? And the reality that should scare us is that most people will never get around to it. And another year goes by, the clock goes on ticking, and the world is worse for our absence. And there's this belief that we have to wait until we're perfect and all the conditions to begin are perfect before we can even start. But we never asked you to be perfect. We just asked you to show up. And that voice of fear in your head is actually terrified of the day you realize perfect records are not a prerequisite for purpose, right? So we begin, we think we have to have it all figured out before we can start, but we actually start, and that is how we figure it all out.
Oh, you hit it right on the head. So today, here's the word, get going.
That's right.
Start right where you're at. That's what God's calling you to. Thank you so much, Mary, for joining us today. May your book get into the hands of many people. I'm sure people can find your book where books are sold. Underestimated by Mary Marantz. And thank you for joining us on The Perspective today.
Thank you.
Did you know you can stream our shows on demand? We are thrilled to announce the launch of our channel on Roku TV. You can now watch the Perspective shows anytime you like and navigate through a variety of playlists. How to find us? Simply search for the Perspective channel, find our logo screen, and save it under your channels of choice on your Roku selection menu. Don't miss out. New feature shows will be updated weekly.
Have you ever looked around and felt like the world is just actually tired? I know I feel tired many days, and like people are actually worn out. We're kind of disillusioned. We're unsure of what to believe anymore. I mean, some don't actually trust faith, some are skeptical of any kind of hope. And many are asking, even if it's just to themselves, does following Jesus really make a difference? And whether they say it or not, many are watching you, not to judge, but to see if this Jesus you talk about is real. Does he actually change anything? Does he actually bring light when things get dark? You see, that's why Jesus' words in Matthew 5 are so powerful. Like right in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount, he turns to a crowd of ordinary people, probably tired people, and says, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. You see, that's not a command, it's a declaration. That's not something you have to strive to become. It's Jesus is saying, this is who you are in him. And that's a big deal. So let's unpack that for a bit. You are the salt of the earth. I mean, think about this. In the ancient world, salt wasn't just for seasoning, it was valuable. It was actually even sacred. It was used to preserve food, especially meat, in a time without refrigerators. Salt slowed down decay. In Leviticus, it was even used in sacrifices. It was seen as a symbol of covenant faithfulness. So when Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth, he's saying, you are here to slow down the moral and spiritual decay that's happening in this world. You preserve truth. You preserve justice and compassion just by living like Jesus. You bring out the richness of life through grace and love. But he also gives us a warning. He says, if the salt loses its saltiness, it's no longer good for anything. In other words, if we lose our distinctiveness as followers of Christ, if we just blend in like blah with the world and everything around us and we stop living out of God's truth, we actually lose our purpose. So the question is, are you still salty? Do our lives, does your life, does my life preserve truth, grace, love? Do our words add flavor to our conversations? Do we live in a way that slows decay and actually brings life? Now imagine hearing this from Jesus. You are not just the salt of the world, but you are the light of the world. Wait, wasn't he actually the light of the world? Like in John 8, verse 12, Jesus says, I am the light of the world, and whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And now he passes his light, that light, onto you and I. We don't shine by our own brilliance. We reflect him. Scripture says a city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand and it gives light to everyone. This world is a dark place, right? But light reveals truth. Light gives direction. Light brings warmth. And Jesus says, that's what we are now. So let it shine. He doesn't say to try to be light. He says you are light. But what we choose to do with that light, well, that's on us. Will we hide it out of fear, or will we let it shine through acts of love and justice, kindness and truth? Sometimes we read this and we think it's all about impact, which it is, but deeper than that, it's about identity. See, salt and light are not just roles we play, they're who we are in Christ. We are his representative in the world. This is God's original design for every human being when he made us in his image. We are designed to reflect God in the world. This is who we are. But it's only possible if we welcome the light of Christ into our own lives first. then we can actually give his light away. It's also about our visibility. Light is meant to be seen. Our faith was never meant to be private or hidden. It's not about being flashy or showy, just to show up, tangible, living out in everyday life. And Jesus ends by saying this: let your light shine before others, and they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. See, that's the goal, that our lives would point to him, not us. That so what we do with this, well, that's actually the challenge. In a world of darkness and confusion, are you being salty in the best of ways? Are you being light to others? Are you genuinely showing up in this world in the way that God has designed you? So go be salty, go be light, because that's the way people will turn their eyes to Jesus.
Hi, I'm Ryan Walter, and during my 15-year NHL career, I signed the odd autograph, especially in Montreal. I remember once there was a young boy, and I signed my name, and then I put John 3:16 next to it, underneath it. And he looked up at his dad, and he said, "Dad, he's wrong. My name's not John, and it's 3:30." I love that story. You know what I love about John 3:16 is that God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son. Love that idea. You know where I've been going recently, though, is to John 3:17, right? Where in 16 he sent, but in 17 he says, I didn't send my son to judge the world. I sent my son to save the world. Love that thought.
Will you donate 2 hours of your time? Crossroads Prayer Center is seeking people with a heart willing to prepare him room to join in the amazing work God is doing through prayer. Learn about becoming a Crossroads Prayer Partner today.
Well, it was a great show today, wasn't it? I learned so much from Mary, and I'm sure you did too. I just want to encourage you to invite Jesus to do the work only he can do in your life so that you can actually be salt and light to the world. We want to serve you. We want to pray with you, and we're available for any prayer request. And even if you just need to chat, call our prayer line at 855-910-6297. And there's trusted people on the other end of that phone, 24 hours, 7 days a week. We also have a gift for you for actually supporting this ministry. If you give a donation of $5 or more, we're going to send you our monthly devotional. And I can tell you they're rich. I've been enjoying working through them as Mike prepares these daily devotionals. So why don't you support the ministry? Maybe even give more than $5. That would be so helpful so that we can serve more people and spread the good news of Jesus in more places across our nation and around the world. Thanks for joining us today on The Perspective. I hope it gave you a fresh perspective, that you're loved, that you're chosen, that God sees you today and he cares about you. We'll see you next time.